On a misty March morning in 1803, a group of fishermen along Japan's eastern coastline spotted something drifting among the waves. At first glance, it didn't resemble a boat. It looked more like an intricately carved object, something more akin to a ceremonial relic than a vessel meant for travel. Intrigued, they hauled it to shore, and it was on that remote stretch of beach that one of Japan's oldest unsolved mysteries began to unfold. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like, and subscribe before this video ends. The vessel was only about 18 feet long and 11 feet tall, far smaller than the merchant ships or warships of that era. Its base was made of metal, its upper body crafted from lacquered wood, and its walls were lined with transparent glass panels joined together in a circular formation. It had the appearance of a meticulously crafted artifact, something built with clear intent and technical precision that the local villagers had never encountered before. From within the vessel emerged a strange woman. She stood roughly 5 feet tall, her skin so pale it seemed to glow in the morning sun, and her hair blazed a deep red, like dried blood. She spoke a language no one could understand, unlike any Japanese dialect, and not even remotely similar to the tongues of Dutch or Portuguese merchants who occasionally passed through the ports of Nagasaki. All the while, as she was surrounded by curious eyes, she clutched tightly a wooden box about 2 feet long. Inside the vessel were containers of drinking water, a small supply of dried provisions, and strange symbols etched into the wooden walls, as if she had been deliberately prepared for this journey, though the destination was clearly not part of any known plan. The villagers didn't know how to respond to her. They had never seen a human being quite like her before. And in a country where everything was governed down to the smallest detail, the sudden appearance of a foreign woman aboard such a bizarre craft was not just rare, it was something that placed the entire village on a delicate line between wonder and fear. As the villagers gathered around the vessel, unsure whether they stood before something sacred or something dangerous, the woman remained seated in silence, her arms wrapped tightly around the wooden box. From within the crowd stepped an elderly man, a village elder who had spent nearly his entire life on this very land. He gazed at the woman for a long moment before softly speaking, saying that he had once heard a story, long ago, that mirrored what now lay before them. It was the tale of a foreign princess, one who had dared to defy an arranged marriage in the name of true love. Her lover had been executed, and she had been sentenced to exile. According to the elder, the box she clutched so tightly might well contain the final remnant of that love, a severed head. At those words, a chill crept down the spines of those present. They stood still, unmoving, as though they were witnessing a legend rising from the soil of reality itself. As the long day passed in silence, no one in the village knew what to do with the woman. She was not a criminal, but neither could she be considered a guest. The village elders gathered in hushed deliberation. They understood that keeping her could lead to consequences they could not predict. At that time, Japan was under the Sakoku policy, a harsh and unforgiving form of isolationism. Any interaction with foreigners, no matter how small, was deemed a transgression. If the imperial court were to learn that a humble fishing village had harbored a foreign woman, the punishment could be severe. The entire village might even be erased from maps, as a warning to others. One elder spoke solemnly. If this woman had truly been fated to drift between the waves, then returning her to the sea would be an act of mercy in itself. And so, they resolved to send her and her vessel back into the ocean. The boat, now called Utsuro Bune, or the Hollow Ship, was gently pushed into the open water. The woman remained exactly as she had been, seated in silence, arms wrapped around her box. And then, the current slowly carried her away, as if she had never existed at all. Stories like this one usually drift quietly into obscurity, much like the vessel itself, swept away by the tide. But what makes the legend of the mysterious woman and the Utsuro Bune truly remarkable is that it did not vanish into the fog of folklore. It was carefully and unmistakably documented in the historical records of Edo period Japan. Across the yellowed pages of the 19th century, the tale appears not once, but in several distinct accounts. Oshuzaki, Toen Shosetsu, Ume no Chiri. Each manuscript contains slight variations, as though the story had washed ashore on different lands, retold in different voices. And yet, the core elements remain uncannily consistent. The strange, circular boat, the red-haired woman, the incomprehensible language, and the box that no one was allowed to open. It didn't stop there. Japanese scholars of the 19th century began posing questions that, even now, remain unanswered. They asked, where did the vessel come from? Who could have built it? And why would a craft so unusual appear in a nation that, at the time, was entirely sealed off from the outside world? Though the ancient records never explicitly state where the woman had come from, many modern scholars have noted uncanny similarities between her appearance and the fashion once popular in a land thousands of miles to the north, Russia, in the era following Catherine the Great. When placed alongside notes from Dutch merchants who had interacted with Russians, the pieces began to form a picture too compelling to ignore. She may have been Russian, or at the very least, from a Eurasian culture where snowbound landscapes and royal bloodlines coexisted in gilded palaces shadowed by silent revolutions. One of the earliest to propose this theory was Kokushi Debakin, a Japanese scholar from the early 19th century. He had thoroughly studied every written account of the Utsurobune and compared them with the testimony of a Japanese sailor named Dakuyo Kayu, who had shipwrecked and lived in Russia for a decade, from 1782 to 1792. Dakuyo recalled having seen Russian women with red hair, clad in thick coats trimmed with white fur, and using handwritten symbols entirely unfamiliar to anyone in the East. He described the script as slanted, rounded, and flowing, something that many believe closely resembled the markings etched into the interior of the Utsurobune. Of course, these symbols did not match any known writing system, not even Cyrillic. While the theory of a northern woman drifting to Japan has sparked much debate, another path leads us inward, into the very heart of Japanese culture itself. Within Japan's vast repository of myth and ancient folklore lies a story seldom told, yet filled with startling parallels. It is the legend surrounding the origins of the Kono clan, an actual noble family that once ruled a significant portion of the island of Shikoku. According to ancient accounts, in the 7th century, a Japanese fisherman pulled from the waves a 13-year-old girl, found drifting alone across the open ocean in a hollow boat. She claimed to be the daughter of a Chinese emperor, pursued by a cruel stepmother. Sheltered by the people of Iyo province, she grew up and eventually married a local prince. The son they bore would go on to found the Kono clan, a family believed to carry royal blood from a distant land. The tale was long regarded as myth, yet later scholars uncovered fragments of genealogical records, faded drawings that depicted a round vessel, and a girl whose features did not appear entirely Japanese. And most striking of all, it was said to have happened nearly 1,000 years before the Utsurobune washed ashore. Though the ancient records tried to anchor the tale within the borders of Earth, there remain details far too strange to be explained by history or tradition. Because if this truly was a vessel, then it was one unlike any known mode of transport ever crafted by human hands at the time. And if this truly was a woman, then she was a woman unlike any archetype ever portrayed in the culture of Edo period Japan. In the historical texts, the Utsurobune is described with such precision that it defies dismissal as mere folklore. Its base was made of dark, polished metal, its upper structure crafted from lacquered wood, and along its walls were transparent glass panels, seamlessly joined in a circular array, like a giant lens peering outward at the world. The vessel had no rudder, no oars, no visible mechanism to suggest it was ever meant to navigate the surface of the sea. At the time, the term unidentified flying object had not yet been conceived. And yet, the illustrations of the Utsurobune found in early 19th century manuscripts bear an uncanny resemblance to what modern humanity would come to recognize, more than a century later, as the classic flying saucer. And so, a new theory began to flicker into existence. Perhaps this vessel had not come from another country, but from another planet. More than 2 centuries have passed since the Utsurobune drifted silently away from the shores of Japan. No one knows what happened afterward, and yet, strangely enough, her story remains, not as a historical event, Not quite as legend either, but as a sliver of something in between, where human reason reaches the edge of its limits and intuition begins to speak in a language no one can translate. What do you think about the woman? Was she an exiled princess? A messenger from a forgotten civilization? Or proof of an encounter from beyond the stars, hundreds of years before such things had a name? If you have thoughts, leave a comment below. I'd love to read them and reflect with you on the mysteries we still haven't solved. Thank you for staying with me until the end of the story. Be sure to hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next episode.